Hello and welcome to the first ever Gary Newbon Sports Show. Each week we'll be bringing you the big names in sport and plenty of interesting anecdotes. Here's today's lineup. Football is back and so is Andy Gray. He joins us from Doha to preview the Premier League. An exclusive interview with Chris Wilder. Will his Sheffield United make the Champions League? Is it in their hands?
And the hands of Chelsea, and the hands of Wolves, and the hands of Manchester United as well.
Yeah.
And the hands of Leicester.
Yeah, but you're playing them all. I mean, you haven't got to sit back and see what they do. You've got an absolute chance here. I mean, wow, Sheffield United in the European Champions League.
Yeah,
that would be something.
Listen, of course, you've got to, you've got to have dreams and you have ambition.
And boxing promoter Barry Hearn joins us with stories about Chris Eubank and Tyson Fury.
Big guy, great name. Wanted to know if I'd sign him, but they wanted £100,000 signing on fee. And in those days, it was a lot of money. It's still a lot of money. And he hadn't really done enough.
So that's all to come. Joining me now is Andy Gray from Doha. Thanks for joining us, Andy. Liverpool 2 wins away from their first league title for 30 years. They've got Everton and Crystal Palace. Everton away. How many games do you think it will take them?
That depends, Gary, on Man City, really. I mean, we mustn't forget City started off on Wednesday night against Arsenal. Should Arsenal win, then that would mean they could actually win it at Goodison. Now, for an Evertonian, that's unthinkable, right? That's unthinkable. So Manchester City have to do the business on that Wednesday night so that whatever happens at Goodison on the weekend, they can't win the title there. That would not be acceptable to Evertonians, and it's not acceptable to me. So I think that it's a tough one. I don't know what they're going to come back like. We don't know. This is a big question. I've been watching the Bundesliga. Some clubs have come back really good, Gary. Like Bayern Munich, who have flown out the traps. They've been terrific. Others have been a bit sloppy, a little bit off the pace. We don't know how these two are going to come back. So it's a tough one. But I expect it within 3 games of them starting. And that's Everton, Palace away. And I think they're away at Man City on the third one. I think the league will be wrapped up by then.
What do you think is going to happen below them?
It's a tough one. I think that Chelsea are vulnerable. I actually think Leicester will hold on. I hope they do. I hope Leicester hold on. Whatever happens in the courts of arbitration, we'll have to wait and see on Manchester City. But apart from that, they'll finish second. I don't think there's a doubt. Leicester, I'm hoping they pick up. They've probably been happier with the break than anybody, because it's given to get himself together again and galvanise his team. They looked like they were slipping. So I hope they stay the pace, because I'd like to see them. The vulnerable ones are Chelsea. They've got a really hard run in, difficult run in, and they're susceptible. United have the easiest run in of the chasing team. I include Wolves and Sheffield United in that, Gary, because if Sheffield United beat Aston Villa, as we know, in the first game back, they'll jump above Manchester United into that 5th spot. So we can't count them at all, Chris Wilder's side, who have been magnificent this season. If you were to ask me right now, before I've seen a ball kicked and I don't know what kind of condition everyone's coming back in, who do I think will get 4th? Looking at the run-ins, which I've just glanced over, I think Manchester United might just nick it,
Yeah. Interesting. Well, talking about Sheffield United, I mean, what a season they have, and we'll talk about it in a moment, but will they get into the Champions League? Let's hear our first with their manager, Chris Wilder. And you're 5 points off the Champions League spot. That's Chelsea. That's fantastic. And you played Chelsea, Spurs, and Manchester United in your last 10 matches. So in a way, the Champions League could be in your hands if you win the 3 matches.
And the hands of Chelsea, and the hands of Wolves, and the hands of Manchester United as well. And the hands of Leicester.
Yeah, but you're playing them all. I mean, you haven't got to sit back and see what they do. You've got an absolute chance here. I mean, wow, Sheffield United in the European Champions League.
Yeah,
that would be something.
Listen,
Not there yet, but
we of course you've got to, you've got to have dreams and you have ambitions, and we've got our head down and looked at every game, and we've been positive in our approach. And if we've been beaten, we've looked why we have been quickly, and talking about the media. One of the other things that we talked about is obviously our reaction to defeat, and I think Phil Jagielka was a main voice in our meetings in that we have to quickly overcome defeat, because one defeat can quickly turn into 2, 3 and 4, and all of a sudden you feel you're playing well and you're not getting results. Thankfully we've really adjusted and got ourselves back up and running after defeats, and that's been a great attribute that we have had, and no doubt we'll need in the next 10 games, Gary, because I think beyond our wildest dreams, we can think that we can cruise through the last 10 games. There's some brilliant games to be involved in. It's all to play for. We understand that. I mean, for us to be even talking about the position and what other people are talking about is just incredible. But we feel we deserve to be here. The way we've approached it, the results that we've got, we've took every game on its own merit, and try to add to that points total, and we'll try our best to add to the 43 points that we've got already.
And it is remarkable. I mean, in 2016, when Chris Wilder took over his schoolboy team, they were in League One. I mean, I and a lot of other people thought they'd get relegated this season. Did you think they'd get relegated?
No. I thought they'd push for Champions League this season.
Your nose is growing.
No, honestly, Gary, I thought they would really struggle. I thought they would really struggle because Chris gave a great shot in the arm to his players by saying, listen, I'm not going to get too many in here. What I've got, I believe in. What I've got, I like. And what I've got here, I think you want to play in the Premier League and you're going to give me everything. And he has, and it's predominantly a British-based team he's had, and it's British coaches. He's brought in a couple of foreigners this season because he had to, but that's okay. But has he surprised me 100%, Gary? Not only him, but his team. And I could not be more pleased for a down-to-earth Brit. Brit is actually shaking up the Premier League, not a foreign coach, but a British coach. And isn't it nice to see people like him, like Frank Lampard, like Brendan Rodgers, all batting it out at the top of the league, rather than all the British coaches? Well, they're only good in the bottom half of the league. They can't take the big boys and they can't take the best teams. It's so refreshing for me to see British coaches actually doing well.
Can I just correct you on one thing? Lampard and Wilder are English coaches.
The British coaches. Right? That's typical of you. I've known you long enough. That's typical of you. They are British coaches.
Fine.
And
okay.
with Brendan, we'll call them British and Irish coaches.
Yes. Okay. Now, what about the bottom there? Your old club, Aston Villa, have got a game in hand against Sheffield United in the opening day, the opening match, actually, of the resumption. Then you've got Bournemouth just hanging in there with Norwich. Well, but they're so close, isn't it, with the teams just above Bournemouth in the drop three. Do you think Villa will go down, first of all?
Do you know what, Gary? I really worry for my old team. I mean that. I think the run-in is not an easy one. I think it's a tough run-in. You know, they've got the likes of Chelsea, Wolves, Liverpool, Manchester United, and Everton away as a last game. West Ham away, I think, is the last game. Arsenal in that. So they've got really tough games against teams in the top half of the division. So I think unless they can find form that they didn't have pre-break, then I really worry for them. I know the likes of John McGinn, that's a plus. I think young John's going to be back, and the rest has been good for him. So he'll be back. But is that going to be enough to get the victories that they need? I don't know, Gary. I really worry. They have to find a level of form that they haven't shown this year yet. And I'm hoping they can. But again, when I look at the games they have, it's a big ask.
So Norwich are bottom with 21 points, then Villa with a game in hand with 25, Bournemouth 27, but above Bournemouth on that 27 are Watford, West Ham and Brighton are only 2 points further on. So of those 6 clubs, you'd put Norwich down, wouldn't you?
I think Norwich have gone.
Yeah.
Norwich have gone.
So who would you put the
I
other?
worry about Villa, as I've said. Worry about Villa. But I think Bournemouth, Watford, West Ham, Brighton are the teams we're probably talking about. If we hadn't had the break, I would say Watford are off and running. You know, to beat Liverpool 3-0 the way they did, very close to, I think, the last game they played before the enforced break, showed that they were in the type of form where I think they could get out. And I think they will get out. They've got good experience. Same with West Ham. I think the dangerous one, and I don't know why I say this, is Brighton. I worry that they could get dragged into it. Bournemouth, I think it's between Villa, Bournemouth and Brighton for the last two spots, Gary. I wouldn't like to place any money in any of them because I really don't know how they're all going to come back. And this is something that we've never had to cope with before, this kind of break. Yes. How have teams prepared? Are they ready to go again? We don't know that. We won't know that till Wednesday, then the following weekend. But I think West Ham and Watford will be okay. I think they've got enough experience, enough quality in there. But Brighton, Bournemouth, Villa, I think it'll be 2 out of the 3 that go.
Andy, certainly as far as I know, you're sorely missed over here, mate. I know you've got a great job at beIN, but you were an outstanding co-commentator, as well as being, I'm biased, you're a great mate of mine, but thank you.
How was I on Sporting Triangles, by the way?
You were. That was an ITV programme that I was involved with, and you were on that one. That's what made you famous. I made you famous.
You told me it would take over from Question of Sport. You lied to me.
I know I did. I know. Not for the first time, Andy. Especially when it came to contracts. Listen, thanks ever so much for joining us. This is my first ever Gary Newbon sports show in this format, and I'm really pleased to have had you as the first guest. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Absolute pleasure, Gary, and I look forward to seeing you this summer when I get back to UK.
Yes, thank you. Me too.
Cheers, pal.
Cheers. Andy Gray, another of my guests, is the busiest sports promoter of them all, including boxing, Barry Hearn. Here's one of his stories about Chris Eubank. Well, more from the irrepressible Barry Hearn a little later. We'll also be talking to Mark Robbins, League One champions, just announced, of course, Coventry City, and Don Goodman on the demise of Sunderland. But here's more from Chris Wilder. You know, the main advantage surely about playing at home is the crowd, isn't it? And maybe it'll help the away teams. I mean, you're starting off with some away matches if there's no crowd there.
I know. I mean, from a personal point of view, and I should imagine I echo the thoughts of every Sheffield United fan, and I should imagine every fan up and down the country. From our point of view, going to the likes of Newcastle, a packed Old Trafford, Leicester City late on in the season, all Villa Park. You know, I always think it's a brilliant place to go and play football. A historic football ground, and it's a brilliant club. As you well know, working in that area for a long time, you know, we've had those experiences taken away from us, and obviously the home games at Bramall Lane, where the support has been phenomenal. An FA Cup quarter final against the Arsenal as well to look forward to. So experiences taken away. I mean, thankfully our away record's been pretty good as well this year. So I think there's all different ways of looking at it. You know, you're playing at Old Trafford and you get a few passes in and you manage to get a foothold in the game, then it becomes uncomfortable for them. If they're on top and their wonderful players start saying yes, then it becomes a really difficult afternoon. So there's all different ways of looking at it. But we've just really enjoyed the experience of being involved in the Premier League. Every game near enough being a sellout, especially at Bramall Lane. So, yeah, those experiences taken away from us are disappointing.
I'm wondering how it's going to affect players, because players want to play in the first team because the atmosphere on these big crowds and big matches, as you say. I wonder if it affects players.
Well, we were talking about it today. You know, we return to training, return to contact training, playing 11 versus 11 behind closed doors, and you can't replicate what's going to happen for us on the 17th. We're trying to get as close to that as possible. We've lined up 3 friendly games against local opposition, which will be a little bit more competitive. But I think we're all in the same boat. Players enjoy playing in front of packed crowds, enjoy the excitement, the nervousness, the adrenaline that rushes through the bodies when not only playing against world-class players, but playing in world-class stadiums in front of packed audiences, and they thrive on that, and they've got the difficult job. You know, from our point of view as managers and coaches, we'll try and inspire them, and we'll try and tell them what we need from them from a tactical and technical point of view. But basically, they've got to get their heads around it, and we're no different to everybody else. I should imagine every manager and every player up and down the country in the Premier League is going to say the same things. That, you know, they're ready, they're fit, but no, everybody's, you know, at different levels, and we'll only find out when the ball gets rolling, Gary. And you know, I think it's the least that we could have done as a profession, in my point of view, is get ourselves back out there and playing, and give everybody a little bit of a boost and get back to work.
Yeah, well, you've got certainly a packed programme. You've got that extra game in hand, which is why the 4 clubs are playing on June the 17th, because they have 4 clubs with a game in hand. You've got June the 17th to July the 26th for the final round. I know it's only 10 matches in the league, but you've got the FA Cup on top, the quarter-final at home, as you say, to Arsenal.
I know what we're doing, progressing in that cup. I mean,
well, do you know, you've never won it, and I think you were last in a final in 1936.
Oh, I think we've won it. I think we've won it, Gary.
Oh, sorry, you won it.
Don't take it off the honours board.
Let me correct you. You won it in the 19th century, 1800 and something.
Don't take.
You were in the semi-final. You keep losing semi-finals since then, apart from the 2 finals that you've been in, or the 1 final. Yeah, you've been in 2 finals. But the last semi-final was just before you came, actually, 2015, wasn't it?
Yeah, I went. Yeah. I went. I was there with my pals. We went. We were winning at half time. I had a couple of extra Guinnesses. We all did. And then the time we got back out, I think we were 2-1 up, and then I think we were about 4-2 down in an heartbeat to Steve Bruce's Hull. So I shouldn't have stayed in the bar as long as I did. Maybe we would have got a result.
So would you play your strongest team in that quarter-final?
100%, yeah. I mean, we've taken the tournament serious from the outset, from the 3rd round. I mean, have we changed our side through the rounds? Yeah. We've got progressively stronger and played a more settled side further on in the competition. But I think once you get to this stage of the competition, you know, you'll definitely fancy the opportunity of getting into the semi-final, even though we're playing the Arsenal, who are a very, very talented and, you know, fabulous football club. And you look at who's left in the competition as well. I think, you know, it is possibly one of the strongest eight teams left in the competition. You know, usually find a couple of championship clubs in there. You know, obviously through history, there's, you know, Chesterfield's rise through to the semi-final, but not this year. You know, they're all in there, and obviously we're part of that, and we're delighted to get this far, and we don't want to just give it up easy. So yeah, it's a tough tie, but one we're going to be really looking forward to and play our as strong a side as we possibly can.
It's interesting, isn't it? You took over your schoolboy team, your love, Sheffield United in 2016. in the 3 and a bit years since then, you took over in May, you've had promotion from League One and then promotion straight away from the Championship. You drop straight into the Premier League with a very limited budget, free transfer players like John Fleck have been terrific. And everyone says at the start of the season, well, one of the teams would be relegated is Sheffield United. Were you surprised when you read all that?
No, I understood it. I think as soon as promoted teams go up into the Premier League, and everybody talks about the jump from the Championship to the Premier League, and I've said it all along, the Championship is a brilliant league to be involved in, but it's such a tough division to get out of. How many big clubs are in there? It's absolutely ridiculous, and they're all trying to get into the Premier League, and they're all trying from a financial point of view to get in there and take risks and take big punts. And not always are successful with it. We've done it in our own way, and we're delighted that the way we've done it. We're a stable football club. I think that's really important, and I think obviously we're very grateful of the timing of getting in there, because I think obviously if it'd been 12 months later, then we'd have been in a position of obviously the Championship clubs are now, which is obviously a difficult one, and from a finance point of view as well. So. Yeah, we're pretty fortunate that the timing was good for us. But I understand that. There was one of the things that we talked about at our pre-season meetings that we had was that, the media attention that we'll get, and everybody will have an opinion on us. And, there's some, I'll be honest, that we'll use and pin up as motivation, and others will just let slide by. But there is always, because of it being the best league in the world, and everybody talks about it, and the media coverage which it has is incredible. I mean, we had our media day this year, and there was people from all parts of the world, that all the boys were doing interviews, and so I think that was a little eye opener for those boys what to expect. But certainly from an opinion point of view, everybody has one, and you have to be careful that you don't take too many too serious. Yeah. But a couple, there's no doubt about it. We did use.
Did you pin them up?
Of course, and we added a few words to them as well. But listen, Gary, we've the journey's been great, and we climbing to the top of the mountain, because that's what it is for a club like Sheffield United in the position that we've been there. And the hardest thing now is to stay here and cement our position, which I certainly understand, and I know the players understand that this is certainly not a time to take the foot off the gas.
I mean, everybody loved Leicester City, and they loved them winning the Premier League. I think everybody's going to love what you're doing, and you're 5 points off the Champions League spot. That's Chelsea. That's fantastic. And you played Chelsea, Spurs, and Manchester United in your last 10 matches. So in a way, the Champions League could be in your hands if you win the 3 matches.
And the hands of Chelsea, and the hands of Wolves, and the hands of Manchester United as well.
Yeah.
And the hands of Leicester.
Yeah, but you're playing them all. I mean, you haven't got to sit back and see what they do. You've got an absolute chance here. I mean, wow, Sheffield United in the European Champions League.
Yeah,
that would be something.
Listen, of course, you've got to, you've got to have dreams and you have ambitions, and we've got our head down and looked at every game, and we've been positive in our approach. And if we've been beaten, we've looked why we have been quickly, and talking about the media. One of the other things that we talked about is obviously our reaction to defeat, and I think Phil Jagielka was a main voice in our meetings in that we have to quickly overcome defeat, because one defeat can quickly turn into 2, 3, and 4, and all of a sudden you feel you're playing well and you're not getting results. Thankfully we've really adjusted and got ourselves back up and running after defeats, and that's been a great attribute that we have had, and no doubt we'll need in the next 10 games, Gary, because I think beyond our wildest dreams that we can think that we can cruise through the last 10 games. There's some brilliant games to be involved in. It's all to play for. We understand that. I mean, for us to be even talking about, the position and what other people are talking about is just incredible. But we feel we deserve to be here. The way we've approached it, the results that we've got, we've took every game on its own merit and try to add to that points total, and we'll try our best to add to the 43 points that we've got already.
How have you done this, Chris? I know you used as a manager coming through the leagues, not having big budgets, but I mean, you've got John Fleck, who's been terrific on a free from Coventry. You've got other players like Jack O'Connell, isn't it?
Yeah, Jack.
£350,000 from Brentford. What is it that you look for in a player? I once read that you look for technical, but also personality. Well, what is it you think you look for in a player?
Yeah, I think they've got to have, especially the potential to be good enough to play at that level. There's so many players that you could reel off that started at the bottom and that have ended up, playing for England and playing for the country. And always, the biggest one for me, and maybe not the greatest one to talk about because he's a Sheffield Wednesday supporter in our era, is Jamie Vardy. I've got an incredible amount of respect for Jamie and what he's done. He was playing Stocksbridge Park Steels, which is up one of the hills in the north of Sheffield, in front of about 50 people, and the journey that he's been on to win a Premier League, to play and represent his country in major international tournaments is just brilliant. So there's been plenty of players that started off at the bottom and they've got the desire and they've got the attributes. They just need that opportunity. We're not lazy in our recruitment, Gary. We've had to work hard because we've not in a situation where we can just write checks left, right, and centre. So there's been a lot of work gone into the process of the recruitment aspect, and then you have to get them on the grass, and they've got to be willing to give everything for the football club, and you've got to be willing to put the time in to improve them and try and pull it together. And we've got a group of players that are extremely committed. They've got a fantastic desire to do well for themselves and keep raising their game. You talk like a John Fleck. He started off at Glasgow Rangers, boy wonder, and had a few disappointments, and obviously came down the road and was playing at Coventry, and we knew a lot about him, and there's a lot of work that goes into it, Gary. But the biggest effort goes from the player, because if he hasn't got that desire inside himself to improve his game and want to lift himself, then nothing's going to happen. And the likes of Flecky and Jack O'Connell have certainly done that.
And of course, one of the recruitments is a lone player, a fantastic young goalkeeper, 23, Dean Henderson. I was just looking at his stats. I mean, he's played 27 games, 22 goals conceded, 10 clean sheets. And in the FA Cup, he's played 3, let in 2 goals and 1 clean sheet. What is the situation with his loan at Manchester United? Because it's the second season, I think, and it runs out the end of June.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that have been talked about is obviously the expiry of loans, and we're hopeful that we can extend the loan. I know Dean definitely wants that to be extended. He wants to finish off the season, and I'm sure Manchester United want him to finish off the season. They've been great with us over the last 2 years. We've had a really healthy relationship with them over the last 4 or 5 years. We've taken a couple of players from them. I think our reputation in terms of the way we look after them is been good, and that's one of the things. When I first got the job, I thought that this is a good football club for the powerful clubs to send their better young players to. Passionate football crowd, good facilities, great stadium at Bramall Lane, and we like to think that they're not wasting the time coming to us. So we've had relationships with Chelsea, with Spurs, with Manchester United with their young players, and obviously Dean comes into that category. He's been outstanding for us. He's obviously broke into the England squad, and we're hopeful that that can be extended. Dean's been fantastic for us for 2 years, and I think the importance of having a really top class goalkeeper has really been key for a major part of our results this year.
Chris Wilder doing a wonderful job then with his boyhood club, Sheffield United. Now we're going back to Barry Hearn, who had a really interesting time, to say the very least, managing the former world champion, Chris Eubank.
Probably the most charismatic fighter we've had. I mean, he never really had the career-defining fights against the top Americans in his career, but he certainly beat everything domestically. His fights against Nigel Benn in 1990 and 95, the 1991 especially, was a classic. But he was an enigma in terms of almost impossible to work out what he was going to come out with or what he was going to say. He was a one-off. And he became an enormous crowd favourite. Simply the Best was his walk-on music, and everyone knew. I think people bought tickets. Initially, they bought tickets because they wanted to see him get beaten.
Yeah.
Towards the end of his career, the audience began to warm more to his charismatic style. He was certainly a major part of my boxing career, no doubt about it.
He used to say that sometimes boxers didn't get what they deserved, but he was a one-off who mugged the promoter for money.
Yeah, I mean, it was, so many times you look back on it now, I remember once he fought Les Winooski on ITV at Brentwood Centre. It wasn't much of a fight, but we did okay. We sold a few tickets, we made a few pounds, and it was a good performance. And I said to him after the fight, tell you what, Chris, you've done well. Treat yourself. I'm treating you to a weekend in Paris. You and your wife, or you and your then girlfriend, go to Paris. I said, I booked a nice room for you in the Georges V. You'll fly business class. Have a weekend on me. And he came back after a longer than a weekend, about 6 days, and gave me a bill for just over £20,000. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, the room you gave me wasn't the best suite, so I upgraded. He said, you didn't provide any transport, Bazza, so I hired a white Rolls Royce and a black driver 24 hours a day, and I lived rather lavishly. I said, it's impossible to spend £20,000. And he said, Mazza said, you gave me the rope and I hung you. And he was such an amazing guy. I said, look, I'm not paying this. Shall we go 50-50? And he went, yes, that's acceptable. So he only cost me 10 grand, but it was something special.
He was. Actually, he stayed at the Georges V, and I'm told that it was his wife's birthday, or his future wife's birthday, and he had £2,500 worth of flowers in the suite.
Yeah, all down to me.
Yeah, but he was allergic to flowers and had them swept out.
Oh, right, well. Listen, he was crazy, but he was valiant.
Yeah. Okay, who would you say were the best boxers that you've been involved with in the matchroom? You've obviously got AJ and you've got Eubank. Was there anybody else that really hit the heights, do you think?
But I mean, there were lots of great fighters.
Yeah. Steve Collins
was with me. I mean, Michael Watson at the end. Yeah, there were some great fighters. Probably the best fighter I ever had was a Mexican called Jose Luis Lopez, who beat Eamon Loughran for the world welterweight title. I'd never seen anyone like him in the gym in my life, and people used to stop and watch him train. Unfortunately, he had a casual affair with drugs, which his career never really developed along. But when I tell you how good he was, Oscar De La Hoya wouldn't fight him. That's how good. And Oscar De La Hoya was in his peak. So he got a draw, I think, with Ike Quarty, who was the unbeaten Ghanaian, great fighter. And I paid him $100,000 for that fight. And he'd never seen $100,000. And he disappeared, and I never saw him again. So that was one that got away, but some great
Did
fights.
Tyson Fury get away? Because
not really. No, Tyson
Fury. Your son is saying that he thought he was overweight. He was 28 stone or something.
There were two occasions with Tyson Fury, which I don't think Tyson actually recalls accurately, but I will recall it accurately with you. And as you know, when you get to my age, you only tell the truth, Gary, because you're too close to God.
I'm a little bit older, believe it or not.
Well, difficult to believe it, looking as well as you do. The first time I ever met Tyson Fury, I think with his father, and Dyson was a massive, so you couldn't miss him. I think I was up in Newcastle doing a show, and this young amateur came along, and big guy, great name, wanted to know if I'd sign him, but they wanted £100,000 signing on fee, and in those days it was a lot of money. It's still a lot of money, and he hadn't really done enough to get on my radar, to be fair. And I said no. And I think Frank Warren gave him that money, or whatever money he gave him, but he signed with Warren. And then, of course, so that was my only involvement. And purely on a financial basis, I didn't think he was worth it. I was probably wrong, but there was a decision I made at the time. And then, of course, subsequently, Eddie bumped into him in Monte Carlo a few years ago when he was going through one of his bad patches, and his weight had ballooned up to, I don't know, somewhere approaching 30 stone or something, some astronomical figure. And I think Eddie could have signed him then, but like me not wanting to take a chance with 100 grand because there was no pedigree, and Eddie looking at him and thinking, this guy's never going to get in condition. We were both wrong. And hats off to Tyson Fury.
And from your point of view, Eddie Hearn is now, your son, of course, is now the leading light in matchroom boxing.
Well, he's the top boxing promoter by a country mile in the world, isn't he? I mean, who gets anywhere near him? To compare any other promoter to Eddie Hearn at the moment is like comparing the corner shop to Tesco.
Yeah.
So he's done unbelievably well. He is sensible. He's fair. He's honest. He has integrity. All the ticks that don't normally go with boxing promoters. I like to think I was slightly different, but Eddie's a different class. I mean, when we write the history on boxing, eventually, he's changed the face of professional boxing globally.
He's still very young, really, as well.
Well, he's 40 years old. But in boxing today, the pressure they're under, I don't know how long your shelf life is. People like us and Mickey Duff and Frank Warren, people like that, we've been going on for years and years. But actually, we've all been going on doing the same old, same old. We haven't really progressed the utilisation of commercial benefits and the digital market, the social media market. The whole world has changed. And our boxing promoters, whether it's me or Aram, even Oscar, certainly Warren, people like that, we were all yesterday, we're all dinosaurs. And the young people today are using more, the social media, the people who actually go out there and find a new audience, where boxing has lost out on just sticking with its more traditional bases. We've become old-fashioned, and UFC's come along and taken a new audience, which boxing's lost out on because it never moved with the times. Eddie's the first real promoter that's actually gone into that on a whole range of platforms and beginning, not finished the job, but beginning to change the whole perception of boxing.
I'll be joined next week by another boxing man, the former world champion Tony Bellew. In football, of course, Leagues 1 and Leagues 2 have been curtailed. So that means that the runaway leaders at the top of League 1, Coventry City, are the new champions and promoted to the Championship. I've been talking to their manager, Mark Robbins. Mark, first of all, congratulations. Brilliant result for you. Strange way of getting promoted.
I think it's the hardest way of getting promoted, isn't it? I'm delighted. I think against the backdrop of this horrendous coronavirus, it's been a long, hard slog and a long wait, in fairness. But I think, and I've not heard anybody, in fairness, say anything other than that we deserve to be the champions of the division, and that's how it's proved. We just had to wait probably 6 or 7 weeks longer than we may have had to wait had we continued the season. So it's one of those things where we've not been able to enjoy it on the pitch, but we'll certainly enjoy it and look forward to when we can resume.
Everybody I've spoken to who watches League One football say that Coventry this season are the best team they've seen. So you've done it on merit, 5 points lead. Can't ask for more than that, really.
No, it's very nice. When you hear people saying nice things about you, that's what it's all about, especially your own supporters. And, for everybody involved with this club that's been through quite a bit of turmoil in the last 10 years or so, it's been it's a brilliant result for us. I think from when I walked in 3 years ago to now, if you'd have said to me that this would be the scenario, then I'd have snatched your hands off, no doubt about it. I think that, we've just got to enjoy it. We've got to enjoy it for what it is. I think that there's an overwhelming vote gone through today. and we can just now focus on what we need to do for when we eventually come back and resume training.
You've done it against all the odds, really, Mark, because you don't even have a home ground. Is there any chance, or is this way out of your knowledge, whether you can get back to the Rico?
Way out of my knowledge, I'm afraid. I think it is what it is. There has to be a will on both sides of the of any decision, and I've just got to get on and plan for what is going to prove to be a really enjoyable but difficult season. And whether that's back at the Rico or whether we remain at St Andrews remains to be seen. But again, it's proved to be a really good temporary home for us. So let's see. That's down the line. I think we just got to enjoy the result from today's vote.
Just looking back on the season, you've always played attractive football, but you've got such a young team. I mean, it's a strange situation for you where you produce so many youngsters, but it's a selling club at the end of the day, really.
I think, show me one that isn't. I think, if you've got good players and there are other teams that want to take your players from you to play at a high level, then that's what part of the job. That's part of your role. Yes, we try and play attractive football. Yes, I've got brilliant staff, and all the credit in the world goes to them. The owners have been fantastic, and we try and get players in that we can develop through our style, through the philosophy, and that's proven again this year. I really enjoyed watching us this year, and that's been the biggest disappointment of the curtailment of the season. But again, you've got to keep doing what we've been doing, and keep bringing those players in, those nuggets, and try and get them to improve, and hopefully they can take us up another step, because ultimately we want to be back amongst the Premier League big boys.
Well deserved by Coventry City, and they're joined in the Championship by Rotherham. There'll be playoffs for the final place. Well, one of the teams dipping out is Sunderland. What a fall from grace they've had. They're a big club, but they're not doing at all well these days. Here's their former striker, Don Goodman.
They're so passionate about their football clubs, and it's a shame that over recent times anyway they haven't had more success to cheer about, because they certainly deserve it.
So it's sad that they're now 8th as the season has finished. They were one of 3 teams with Peterborough and Ipswich who wanted the season to continue. I wonder if it would really have made any difference.
It's hard to imagine, really, Gary. The season as a whole has been relatively average. They find themselves sort of outside the playoff places. And if you look at the last 4 games, they tell you the reason why, because they've played against Coventry, they've played against Fleetwood, Gillingham and Bristol Rovers, and they haven't won any of those games. And they are the so-called better teams, really. So I think they are probably about where they deserve to be, albeit it saddens me to say.
Well, they were taken over by Stuart Donald and his consortium after they slipped, can you believe it, in successive seasons from the Premier League down to League One. And now they want to sell it again. I mean, what is the future there, do you think?
Well, it's a difficult one, obviously whoever does buy it is going to buy a wonderful, wonderful football club. And I suppose, given that it's at League One, they might actually get it for a relative bargain, really, because the potential there is just astronomical. They get the crowd, win, lose or draw, they get big crowds, but they need to be getting back up the leagues on the pitch. And they obviously need somebody in charge at the top end of the football club that's in it for the long haul, because there's no short-term fixes in football, Gary. You know that as well as any of us. It's about having a medium to long-term project, and it's about having a plan, and it's how you execute that plan that will dictate ultimately where you end up. But it's certainly a club that's crying out to be back up to its former glories.
Well, thank you very much indeed for watching. We'll be back same time next week, of course, on punching.tv, the Gary Newbon Sports Show on Facebook, in conjunction with the Mail Online. Our guests will include, as I mentioned earlier, the former world boxing champion Tony Bellew and the 3 times world snooker champion Mark Selby, and plenty from the world of football. See you then.